In a late-night unsigned shadow docket ruling this week, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed Alabama to use a congressional map that favors Republicans, a map that a lower court ruled was intentionally racially discriminatory. The ruling allows state officials to implement a 2023 redistricting map designed to give Republicans an edge in 6 of the state's 7 congressional districts and eliminates a majority black district. In a New York Times op-ed, Mara Gay writes, quote, "The effort to destroy black political power in the South is among the greatest betrayals of black Americans and those who have voted alongside them by the federal government in living memory. It will have far-reaching consequences for all Americans and for our democracy." Joining us now is Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network and host of MS Now's Politics Nation. Rev, thanks for joining us this Sunday morning. Just jumping off of where Mara left off, talk about some of the far-reaching consequences that you think decisions like this are going to have for all Americans.
Well, the far-reaching circumstance is that they, in effect, are saying that even though the black population is what it is in the state of Alabama, they will only have one congressional district that will be dominated in terms of population by the inhabitants, which is the black community. So by them carving this out intentionally, even after the state Supreme Court said it was racially biased, it was racially done, the new map. And for the Supreme Court said, well, I don't care what the state court says, we're saying they can go with that map that the Alabama State Supreme Court said was racially biased, shows that we have a Supreme Court that is bent on undoing everything that was gained in the 60s. And that is why people that said voting doesn't matter had empowered Donald Trump, who has now stacked the Supreme Court into being the most anti-civil rights, voting rights court in our lifetime.
Rev, for anyone who hasn't read Mara Gay's essay in the New York Times, they really should, because it was very powerful. I want to read something else from it. She writes, "In a moment when many things are calling for our attention, it is tempting to look away, but there are tectonic generational shifts in power unfolding before our eyes that demand action. This is about the disenfranchisement of millions of Americans to achieve the permanent dominance of a single political party. This is about the rolling back of the clock to a time that many Americans living today do not recognize and others fear because they do." And it was that last line, others fear because they do. They do remember that time before we had the 65 Voting Rights Act, before we had the 64 Civil Rights Act. How concerned are you that we will turn the clock completely back to pre-1964 America? And that was not a pleasant time for African Americans, but also for the country writ large.
Well, Mara Gay is absolutely correct and courageous to write it. I think that to really personalize it, I was 11 years old when the Voting Rights Act was passed, but I was raised by a mother and even my father who grew up in the South. So I was reminded every day how they could not vote in their hometowns until the 65 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, and they had moved to New York. So I grew up in a generation that were the children of those that were denied, but we was raised being told that. And we saw how they began to have to deal with the implementation of that act. With the removal of that act, you have generations now that have no kind of first or second-hand knowledge of what that means, and they will suffer for that. For example, this week we see the labor statistics, where blacks are now 66% unemployed, whites 3.8% unemployed. Well, the representation being cut down in the Congress potentially with decisions like this means how do you represent that we have a continued imbalance in something as basic as jobs? So I think what Mara's point resonates with me is that we need to let people understand, white and black, that has no direct reference point to what this could mean, This is not some academic political exercise. This will translate into who will stand up and represent something for the goods and services of your everyday life.
Rev, does this feel different than the civil rights movement? You were, as you said, a product of it. You are obviously someone who was the bridge from the civil rights heroes of that time to our modern day civil rights heroes. But I think to me, sometimes as a student of history, it sometimes even feels sometimes scarier now. The access to misinformation and disinformation, the lack of standing up in some of our institutions for Black people, whether it comes to voting or simply being able to work and hold a job. When you think about the difference between then and now, what do you see?
I think that it is very different in this sense. Though I came, as you said, right after the 60s and was raised by those that led the 60s and 70s. In those times, even into my times, the 80s, 90s till now, people acted like they wanted to be fair, even if they were unfair. So if we would march in the North, Howard Beach, Bensonhurst, people say, oh, that is absolutely outrageous. They would call people the N-word and throw eggs at us when we march. You now have people that are proudly and arrogantly saying, yes, we're going to cut racial equality. Yes, we're going to cut diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are proudly saying, we don't care about diversity. And that's different. In my lifetime, I've never seen such an arrogant frontal attack on even the pretense of wanting racial equality and racial fairness.
Reverend Al Sharpton, as always, taking us to church. It is such an honor to get to work with you and have these conversations with you, sir. Thank you so much.
The honor's mine.